Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Thanks to Nick's Tarma for this one. Amy plays 3 blind mice while she controls Virtue of Knowledge. Which chapter abilities trigger and how many times? Okay, so in order to answer this question, we're going to need to know a little bit about how sagas function. See, abilities in Magic are very literal. We know that when we play 3 blind mice, it's going to enter the battlefield, and then some stuff is going to happen, but if the stuff that happens isn't a triggered ability that triggers from a permanent entering the battlefield, Virtue of Knowledge will not help us out at all. So let's take a look at the Chapter 1 ability, and right out of the gate we can see that there's a problem. That's a triggered ability alright, but it triggers from lore counters being put on 3 blind mice, not from it entering the battlefield, which means that Virtue of Knowledge isn't going to make it trigger an additional time. What's worse, if you look at the thing that puts the initial lore counter on 3 blind mice, we can see that it doesn't use the word at, when, or whenever, meaning that it isn't a triggered ability at all. Accordingly, the 3 blind mice will work exactly the way that it normally does, and the Virtue of Knowledge isn't going to do anything. Well, that's disappointing. You know what would work a little bit better with the 3 blind mice? Doubling Season. See, the thing that puts the original counter on the saga is not a triggered ability, but it is an effect, which is just a thing that happens in the game as a result of a spell or ability. This means that you would get 2 lore counters on 3 blind mice as it comes into play, rather than just 1. The way that chapter abilities are worded, this means that you actually would get the chapter 1 and the chapter 2 abilities in this case. Because both of those abilities triggered at the same time, the controller of 3 blind mice would put them onto the stack in either order, according to their choice. Unfortunately, the chapter 2 ability targets the token that it copies. This is bad because targets get chosen as part of the process of putting triggered abilities onto the stack, meaning that it cannot target the mouse token from the Chapter 1 ability the way that you usually would, because that token hasn't been created yet. On the plus side, if you already do have a token to copy, then creating another token that's a copy of it would constitute, in effect, creating 1 or more tokens under your control, which means Doubling Season would give you an additional copy of that token. Of course, this would also be true for the mouse token in the Chapter 1 ability. There's just one more thing that's kind of weird to note, which is that the thing that puts a lore counter on your sagas every turn is a turn-based action. It doesn't happen as the result of a spell or ability, so it does not qualify as an effect, meaning that Doubling Season won't interact with it. The next turn after you played 3 blind mice, you would get the Chapter 3 ability, and you would have to wait until the next turn after that to get the Chapter 4. In contrast, Vorinclex here only cares that you're putting counters on a permanent. It doesn't care about why. So with this, you would go straight to Chapter 2, just like in the Doubling Season example, but the next turn you would get the Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 abilities both, again in whatever order that you like. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.